Добрый день! Я рада всех сегодня видеть в этот вторник, вернее, я мало кого вижу, но многие видят меня. И я рада, что наконец-то наступил наш следующий вебинар, уже получается 7-й по счету. И сегодня я с вами, Дарья Александровна, буду говорить о Страноведении России. Как вы думаете, о чем мы именно будем говорить от А до Я? Что это может быть? И это не азбука, нет. И поскольку это занятие по английскому, мы будем полностью говорить на английском. А пока мы не начали, я бы хотела узнать, кто сегодня у нас присутствует в чате. Пожалуйста, поставьте ваши плюсики в чат, и тогда мы начнем. And from now on, let's speak English and let's start our webinar. So, let's start with the question. Where do you live? In what city or town, or maybe in a small village? Please write in the chat the name of your city, town, or village. I will be glad to see the names of how big Russia is. I would like to see all of the names of the cities and towns. I am from St. Petersburg, from here. Maybe there are so many people from other cities, for example, from Moscow, from Pskov. Please let me know. And now, let's start with a small quiz. Please write the answers to this quiz into the chat, and then we'll check it at the end of our class. So, question number 1. What is the population of Russia? How many people live in Russia? The first answer is 136 million. The second answer is 146 million. And the last answer, 156 million. Write the letter to this question. Please write number 1 and, for example, A, B, or C. I give you 5 seconds. Now let's look at the second question. It is a quiz. You don't have to know everything. We cannot know everything, right? So just try to guess if you don't know. Question number 2. How many federal subjects are there in Russia? The first option, 67. The second option, 78, and the last option, 85. How many federal subjects? Федеральные субъекты, right? Federal subjects. You can look at the picture, maybe it will help you. Maybe not, because you won't be able to count all of them, right? So just try to guess. And write your answers into the chat. Write number 2 and A, B, or C. And now, let's move on to the next question. Question number 3. How many ethnic groups reside in Russia? What is to reside? What does it mean to reside? Reside means to live, to dwell. For example, I reside in St. Petersburg. I live in St. Petersburg, right? And how many ethnic groups reside in Russia? The first option, less than 119. The second option, under 190. And the last option, over 190. you can look at this map, but it won't help you. It's just to know that so many ethnic groups really reside in Russia. And write your answer into the chat. Don't forget about it. And I'll give you 5 seconds. And we'll see the answers at the end of the class. Be patient. And today we are going to read a short text about why do Russians look so different. Do you know why Russians really look so different? Maybe you can give your answer. If you have an answer, you can write in the chat. But now we are going to read a text. So let's find out. Let's find the answer to this question. And we'll start reading the text that is called Multinational Russia. So the answer is here. Russia is a multinational country, right? So let's start. Russia's ethnic diversity often surprises tourists, as there are more than 190 ethnicities in the country. There are still plenty of small and microscopic nationalities living in Russia. Even on the verge of disappearing, they still manage to hold on to the last vestiges of their own languages, traditional culture, and way of life. Any ethnic group within Russia numbering less than 50,000 individuals is considered a micronationality. Officially, there are 47 such groups out of the 190 peoples currently living in the country, and they reside mainly in the north and far east. How are they managing to preserve their culture these days? Let's look at the words involved. So the first word is diversity. It means that Russia has many ethnic groups. Diversity is разнообразие. The second word, even on the verge of disappearing. On the verge, на краю, на грани. On the verge of disappearing, на грани исчезновения. They still manage to hold on to the last vestiges of their own languages. Vestiges means the rests. What is left? Остатки, vestiges. And they manage to hold on. To manage means to be able to can. They still can do something, right? To manage, как бы справляться. And you've already seen this word, to reside. And the last one, to preserve. Сохранить, to preserve. Now let's move on. Nifs. It is a name of these people. So, the indigenous inhabitants of Sakhalin Island are considered the most mysterious people in the world. Having lived in isolation for a long time, their origins are still unclear, while their language resembles no other. Today, around 5,500 individuals remain, with plenty speaking both Russian as well as their indigenous language. So, let's look indigenous. Коренные, indigenous. Indigenous inhabitants. Inhabitants are residents. People who live somewhere. They are inhabitants. Население. Коренное население. their origins are still unclear. Origin – это происхождение. Their origin are still unclear, while their language resembles no other. It's not similar to other languages. It's not like Russian or English or Chinese. It was isolated, and it resembles no other. It has no common features with other languages. And I can tell you that they speak Russian mostly, and they start to forget their language, which is Nif language. They forget it. And it's a pity. So the next group of people is Itelmen. These inhabitants of Western Kamchatka have been fishermen for hundreds of years. They worship the spirits of nature, despite having converted to Christianity back in the 18th century. However, they still preserve their shamanistic rituals. The head shaman in the community is female. In total, there are some 3,000 Itelmens in Russia, most in the Koryak Okrug in the archipelago. Incidentally, all indigenous people of the Russian North are genetically related to Native Americans, but the Itelmens consider themselves to be their closest relatives. At least they are not trying to hide, forget, or dispute this fact. A related Indian tribe from Canada once presented them their costumes, which the Itelmens now wear with much pride. You can look at their costumes in this picture. They really look like the Indians, right? From America. So they worship the spirits of nature. To worship means поклоняться. They worship the spirits of nature. Поклоняются духам природы. Despite having converted. Несмотря на то, что они сменили религию to Christianity. But they preserved their shamanistic rituals. Preserved, сохранили. We can see this word again, preserve. And it's a very interesting fact that all indigenous peoples of the Russian North are genetically related to Native Americans. Did you know it? If yes, please press plus into the chat if it is a new information for you. Write number one. Write number one if it is a new information for you. A new piece of information for you. So, the Itelmens now wear with much pride. Pride means to be proud of something. Pride, to be proud. You know proud, and now you know this word pride, гордость. And the next piece of this text, the majority of this group, numbering about 10,000, that's about Seto. The majority of this group, numbering about 10,000, now reside on territory of modern Estonia, with only 300 individuals remaining in Pechori, Pskov region. The Seto consider cursing a bad thing, as it attracts evil spirits, and so their language does not possess a single profanity. Unlike the Lithuanian Estonians, the Seto in both countries are Orthodox Christian, although they have preserved many of their traditions. For this reason, they are referred to as semi-believers. Today, the Seto of Pskov communicate in Russian and carry Russian names. Despite that, they still enjoy a plethora of festivals and cultural events borrowed from their ancestors. You can look at this picture and to see their costumes. Perhaps it is one of their festivals. Oh no. So we're still here on this slide. It's one of their festivals, and these are the traditional costumes. And what is interesting about them is that they consider cursing a bad thing. Cursing is to say bad words. It has two meanings. For example, a witch can curse someone, or one can say a bad word, and it also means cursing. То есть либо проклинать, либо ругаться нехорошими словами. Cursing. And their language does not possess a single profanity. Possess does not have. It does not have a single profanity, which is богохульство или сквернословие. We can say that it's showing no respect for God or a religion, especially through your language. And they still enjoy a plethora of festivals, plenty of festivals, plethora, a lot, изобилие. And cultural events borrowed from their ancestors, from their parents, from their grandparents, and so on and so on. Ancestors. То есть предки. And now let's fill in the table with the facts about these peoples. So the first ethnic groups was Nivs, Nivki, you can say in Russian. The second, Itelmen, and the last one, Setu. So first of all, let's fill in the table about Nivs. So their number. Their number is 4,500. Their region, where they live. Do you remember Sakhalin, Kamchatka, or Pskov region? That's Sakhalin, but they also live in Japan, by the way. It's not Russia, but it's Japan. And they speak Nivs language. They also call it Gilyak. And what was interesting about that? Read the facts and choose one for this gap. And the answer is they lived in isolation for a long time. And the next group, Itelmen, their number, do you remember? This one or this one? Their number is 3,000. And the region, Kamchatka or Pskov region. Their region was Kamchatka. And their languages, Itelmen language, the Itelmen language, and what was interesting about them is that they preserved their shamanistic rituals, and the head shaman in the community is female. What does it mean? The head shaman, главный шаман in the community is female. It's a woman. It's not a man, it's a woman. And the last group, setu, their number is 10,000. You can find information that it's about 12,000, but only 300 live in Russia. Only 300 live in Russia. More or less, give or take. And they live in Pskov region, in Pechory. Their language is called setu as well. And they consider cursing a bad thing. And now, let's fill in the gaps with the words given. These are the words from the text. Some of them are new for you, some of them maybe not that new, so it will be easier. Let's read the first sentence. There are several groups that still live in the area. And you should choose one of these words. Ancestor, indigenous, verge, worshipped, resides, cursed, remain, vestiges, origin, inhabitants. So there are several. I give you 5 seconds to think. And you're right. There are several indigenous groups. Коренные группы. Latin is the of Italian and French. Latin, латинский язык, латынь, is the, and choose one of these words. It must be a noun, right? Существительное, a noun, is the ancestor, you're right. And the next one. Many ancient cultures, the sun and moon. Many ancient cultures. And now you should choose a verb, глагол, a verb. So you can choose worshipped, resides, cursed, and that's all. Or remain. Let's look. Did they curse the sun and moon? I don't think so. They worshipped the sun and moon. Поклонялись. Поклонялись солнцу и луне. They did not curse it. They did not curse them. Yes. The next one. The of the town don't like the tourists. Choose one of these words. The I think that you've chosen. And I'll show you the answer. The inhabitants of the town don't like the tourists. And the next one. Mountain gorillas are on the of extinction. На краю, на грани вымирания, да? On the, it's an expression, on the verge of extinction. And the next one, the bad witch. Плохая ведьма, злая ведьма, the bad witch. The child. So she cursed the child. And in this case, it means наложить проклятие. Yes, and in that example from the text, we saw it in other context. In that example, it was like ругаться. But here, in this expression, it means проклинать. And the next one. He steal at his parents' house. We need a verb. Нужен глагол, да? He still lives, right? He still resides at his parents' house. And the next one. The new law removed the last of royal power. Новый закон убрал последние королевской власти. The last, как мы скажем, остатки, the last vestiges of royal power. And the next one. 2/3 of the pupils are of Asian origin. It's easy because there is just one word left. Mother was advised to remain indoors for a week. She was ill apparently, and she was advised to remain indoors, to stay in, not to go out, right? So, and now let's look at the next task. And in this task, I offer to you to make up your own sentences with the words given below. There are only 4 words, and please, after our class, write a few sentences into the chat with the words inhabitants, origin, reside, and indigenous. You can make up your own sentences. You can write all of them in one sentence. Or you can write 4 sentences or 3, but in one sentence you'll use 2 of them. So, but I ask you to write a little bit. And now you are going to know the answers to the quiz that we did at the beginning of our class. So the first question was, what is the population of Russia? The second question was, how many federal subjects are there in Russia? And the last one, how many ethnic groups reside in Russia? I think that maybe you have found the answer to the last question in the text. But what about the first one and the second? So the answers. B, C, C. There are 146 million people in Russia. And the next question. There are 85 federal subjects in Russia. That's a lot. 85. That's a lot. How many of them have you visited? And the last question, the answer to the last question is over 190. And please, now write into the chat what you learned and what you would like to learn about this topic, about peoples of Russia. Please write it into the chat. And if you still have any questions, I will be glad to answer them. You can write them into the chat too, and I'll read them and answer them after our class. And I see you next week. Thanks a lot. And I will be glad to spend 1 hour of our class next week. 30 minutes of our class next week with you. And thanks a lot and goodbye.